That, of course, is an option. If you want to see how this path ends, I won't stop you.
A white orb originates from an unknown man, who sends it towards Earth to observe what it will do. The orb is capable of replicating appearances. Upon its arrival on the planet, it takes the shape of a rock since that was the first thing coming in contact with it. A little time passes by, and somehow a wolf ends up dying on top of the orb, which now continues its journey after taking the form of the same wolf. The orb reaches a camp nearby where it meets a nameless boy who is the only survivor from that camp. The boy recognizes the wolf as Joanne and takes the orb in. The boy turns out to be quite a cheerful soul, and for the time being, the orb stays with him. We get to know more about the boy as he decides to leave for a land beyond the mountains that he refers to as Paradise, a place where the members of his tribe had gone after leaving him behind to look after the sick and old people of his tribe. The boy continues his journey with Joanne, and he keeps smiling even after facing some harsh conditions, while firmly believing that he will reach his tribe members. The boy keeps moving even after he gets sick and gets a wound on his leg, but sadly, his hopes crumble after he finds the remains of his tribe in the supposed land of Paradise. With multiple injuries and a sad heart, the boy returns back to his camp where his condition gets really bad due to the infection of his wound. Joanne watches the boy as he still tries to give hope to himself about the return of his tribe members, and he sits on his chair for his life to finally fade away. The orb had gotten close to the nameless boy and now takes his form as it decides to reach the real paradise and fulfill those dreams that the boy was unable to reach. The orb, who had now taken the form of the boy, starts to head for the south side of the land. The orb is revealed to have the ability to copy memories from stimulation of whoever's form it takes, but even then, having no experience of even the most basic things needed for a human leads the orb to die multiple times, but it resurrected itself every time since it's immortal. The boy had died around 6 times by the time he reached the tropical area. However, all these deaths were not useless. While the boy continues his journey, we come across a girl named March from a nearby village, Ninana, who is having fun with her friend Perona. March is living a normal life until the village is visited by a woman named Hayase, who demands a sacrifice for her lord, Oniguma. After some inspection, March ends up being in the horrible place of the sacrifice, as she now has to be taken to Oniguma for the safety of the rest of the village. Hayase accompanies March on a 3-day journey to the altar, when, as they are traveling, a sudden ambush on the caravan gives March the opportunity to escape. While running, March ends up falling into a swamp where she comes across the nameless boy, who resurrects right at that moment and leaves both March and the guards chasing her absolutely terrified. The aggressor turns out to be Perona, and March decides to follow the boy. The boy is still not talking, and as things are not really going anywhere, March gives him some fruits that he eats like a dog until he is finally satisfied. The boy, who was wandering without a clue until now, decides to follow March around, and as she sees the situation, she remarks how it seems like she is the boy's mother. As she gives the boy some more fruits, March tries to come up with a name related to the boy's immortality, while Perona tries to cut her way out of the restraints with a hidden blade. Perona almost succeeds in her escape, but suddenly a giant bear rushes towards her, growling, and pushes her off the cliff after destroying the guards. As Perona falls down into the jungle, March is trying to teach the boy about how to eat like a human when she gets caught by Hayase. Hayase and her party lead March to the altar on the top of the mountain after drugging her, while Perona comes across the boy while looking for March. Hayase and the company are leaving the altar after presenting March to Oniguma when the bear from earlier arrives. Hayase assumes that the bear is Oniguma and is heading to the side when Perona arrives to save March with the boy right behind her. After Perona is knocked down, Hayase decides to watch from a distance as the boy starts to fight the bear and ultimately takes the form of the wolf after he gets bitten by the bear. The orb, who had now turned into a wolf, attacks the bear and, despite the size difference, manages to bleed the bear to death by using its regeneration power. Hayase is unable to believe the devastating scene right in front of her eyes, and she offers to spare March, Perona, and the wolf on the condition of taking them to her land called Yanomi. Perona accepts the offer, and the orb comes up to March as a wolf to finally say something and utters the word "thank you" as March was trying to teach it earlier. Our group are on their long journey to Yanomi region when Perona wakes up after having a dream about her past, where her loved one was killed in an incident. Since the journey was long, the group goes through a couple of events where Hayase seemingly acts nice to them. March names the orb Fushi, and the group manages to reach the city of Yanomi after a few days. Hayase continues her nice behavior with the rest and accommodates to anything they wish for until she finally shows her real face to just straight up drug our trio to capture them. The sight of the bear's death, who was supposedly Oniguma, and Fushi's immortality piqued Hayase's interest as she later sent some prisoners to test Fushi's powers out in his confinement cell. After multiple brutal events attempting to take his life, Fushi learns new words as he starts to retaliate and even tries to turn into a wolf for the sake of getting out. After trying out everything, the guards poison Fushi's wolf form and throw him into March's cell. Perona was locked in the cell above March, and she got the arrow away from March to plan an escape. Perona's plan was to prove Oniguma's death in the bear form to reveal how a sacrifice is no longer needed, and ultimately secure March and any more children from getting taken away in the future. Perona works on her plan while Fushi digs a hole towards the bear in the same building, where they get caught by Hayase, who makes March help the bear out by removing the arrows in its hide. After multiple attempts, the arrows get removed, and Fushi thanks March before he receives a new vessel from the simulation of the bear. While March and Fushi were sent back to their cell yet again, Perona started her escape plan, but a slip-up caused her to get in trouble with some guards. March's big sis somehow manages to escape the situation as she arrives at March's cell to escape with the other two using an improvised plan. Perona gets March and Fushi out, and it turns out that the old lady Pioran will be leading the group out as Perona had let her in on the plan as well. Before the group would leave through the sewage line, Perona tries to behead the bear so she can use it as evidence, but she ends up relying on herself to convince the villagers as March stops her from doing something so cruel to the bear. The group manages to get on a wagon and are on their way back to Ninana when Hayase starts to chase them down. Perona jumps into the fight, and as she's busy with the guard, an arrow launched by Hayase flies towards her, but gets stopped by March. March receives the arrow right in the core, and seeing this makes Fushi attack the whole city in the form of the huge bear. Despite Perona's efforts, March ends up leaving this world. Perona tells Fushi to stop as he had done enough, and she holds a blade to her throat as the guilt of letting March die gets to her. March's supposed spirit tells Fushi to stop Perona from wasting her life before he takes her back to the village in his bear form. Upon their arrival at the village, Perona breaks the news of March's death to her parents, who also tell Perona that none of this was her fault. Just as Fushi transforms back into his human form, we get informed about the rush by Yanomi forces. Perona tells Fushi to separate from her right here as he will get into more trouble if he stays. Fushi complies and is heading back into his wolf form when Perona saves him from getting shot by Hayase as she was preparing to take him down with another poisoned arrow. Fushi continues his journey through the forest where he travels as a wolf and changes into March's form when he feels hungry. Fushi is wandering around at night as March when he comes across Pioran, who was left alone after the recent escape. After finding Fushi, Pioran decides to follow him along, and they come across an indication of their next destination when Fushi shows interest in Pioran's writing. The old woman offers to teach Fushi words. As they continue the journey to reach a boat, Fushi learns to speak just enough so he is able to explain his story to the old woman. The pair had been heading to the land of Takunaha, where Pioran's lover lives. The two decide to call it a night and are sleeping when an unknown creature attacks Fushi and steals his memories. This loss was a big deal as Fushi's form ability was dependent on it. Fushi was having a hard time even operating properly when the man who spawned the orb in the beginning comes out of thin air and helps Fushi regain his memories. The man remarks Fushi's purpose is the preservation of this land as he leaves while telling Fushi that he will be returning at a later time. We step aside from Fushi for a while as we get to know the story of a kid named Gooo from 3 months ago who works at an alcohol shop. Gooo was living an okay life with his brother and he was decently content despite his financial conditions. Gooo had gotten a crush on a girl named Rin, and that was helping him live life despite this disappearance of his brother. Googoo's life changed drastically in an accident when, in an attempt to save Rin from a lock, he got his face badly crushed. The worst thing was that no one really helped him out until Pioran's lover, Boozman, took him home and gave him a mask to wear. By this time, Gooo was working at Boozman's place, where he met Fushi when he arrived with Pioran. After a little introduction, Gooo got to know Fushi better, and he shared some personal stuff with him as time passed. Gooo considered himself really ugly, and he revealed that he still had a crush on Rin when she somehow entered the alcohol shop. To Googoo's dismay, despite all of his efforts in getting along with Rin started to show a bold interest in Fushi that led Gooo to work out and improve himself just for the sake of impressing Rin. The next day begins with Rin asking the old man to let her move into his shop. Gooo, who liked the idea quite a lot, is later in the kitchen where he learns about various abilities that Fushi has. Gooo teaches Fushi about how to say no sometimes, and he is still with the old man in the back room later when he comes to know that the old man had made some changes to his body. Gooo runs away from the shop full of anger, and Fushi, who had no idea of how to do chores, keeps making a mess trying to do them. Googoo was out looking for jobs to make money, but sadly, his deformed face made him receive horrible treatment from people, to the point that he even couldn't work at any jobs anymore. Fushi was told by Bjorn that he must get Googoo back if he wants to learn cooking and cleaning, while Googoo decides to sell the ring that Rin gave him a few months back to get some money. Even though Googoo didn't want to sell the ring because of his feelings towards Rin, he ended up finding his brother in an alley only to see him in a weak and a pathetic state. Googoo's brother was like that, most likely because of having no money, so Googoo ends up giving his ring away to his brother before leaving. Googoo ends up wandering full of sadness due to people calling him a monster. The kid gets kidnapped by some people the next night, but luckily, Googoo gets saved when Fushi arrives for his help by changing forms. Fushi finally manages to explain how much he needs Googoo in his life, and seeing Fushi require his help makes Googoo happy as he had finally found a friend who was similar to him. A while goes by after the reunion, and as the two pass some time fooling around, Googoo gets close to Fushi as if they were brothers. Fushi tries to talk Googoo into returning to the booze man, but he ends up fainting from not eating in quite a long time. Fushi's abilities had grown to the point where he could form little things with minor stimuli, and he even managed to give Googoo some fruits to eat. Fushi reveals his ability to take the form of the dead to Googoo, and Googoo remarks how he used to be completely lonely after his brother separated from him until he met Fushi, who is like his family. Googoo requests Fushi to take his form to remember him as well, and the sentimental moment of our boys gets interrupted by Rin, who comes inside the tent to talk Googoo into returning. Rin reveals how the old man is sorry for what he did, and she tries to force Googoo into showing his face. Fushi leaves to look for Googoo's mask that he had thrown away earlier, while Rin sits down to talk with Googoo so they can get to know each other better. Rin remarks how she hates her family as they force her to do things she absolutely doesn't want to, before she befriends Googoo, who follows her to the city with a makeshift mask. Rin's family had deployed people to look for her, and she almost gets caught if it wasn't for Googoo's help. By this time, Fushi successfully finds the mask and brings it back to Googoo, who starts to accept that the old man cannot be blamed after all. Our trio gets interrupted by an older lady who is looking for Rin, and Fushi takes the form of an injured March to let the other two escape. Things get troublesome for Fushi yet again, as the unknown creature, just like earlier, arrives to take away his memories, putting him in deep trouble. The noises make Googoo head to help Fushi out, but he just ends up being protected by Fushi. Fushi tries to buy some time for Googoo to get away, while Googoo finds out about his ability to breathe fire due to the old man's alteration. Googoo's plan fails eventually as all of his alcohol had been spent, so he heads back to the old man's restaurant to fill his organ up yet again. Googoo reaches the restaurant to find out Rin's parents are trying to make her leave the place, and Googoo tells them to leave the girl alone as he gets his refill from the old man at Bjorn's orders. Googoo heads to help Fushi out while remarking that he is the one who loves Rin the most at the doorway. The unknown creature, who had grown quite a lot at this point, is in the form of the bear, as he had stolen a lot of Fushi's memories and pretty much thrown Fushi into not existing anymore. In a surge of emotions, Googoo succeeds in using his fire breathing and leaves everyone shocked when he absolutely demolishes the unknown creature. After the creature had died, Googoo was sad about losing Fushi as he was really close to him, but a miracle happened and Fushi's memories started to get together and reached the rock form, from where he regenerated back to his usual forms again. With the danger over for now, Googoo returns to the old man's restaurant, where outside, Fushi is approached by his master yet again, who tells him to leave this place as he will not be able to develop further otherwise. The master named the unknown creatures as knockers and is trying to explain the danger to Fushi, but he insists on staying and learning from Googoo. The master lets Fushi have his way and see Googoo's end, while Fushi heads back inside to learn ways to live life from Googoo. Fast forward 4 years, and we meet Googoo, who has now become a young, strong man. Rin arrives at the restaurant again, and while the others prepare to have lunch, Googoo heads out to look for Fushi, who has now grown facial hair and become an adult. Fushi's story continues as his short period of 4 years of peace is over, and things are about to pick up pace without him even knowing about what exactly the wheels of fate withhold for him, Googoo, and Rin.